The left-wing lunatics are trying very hard to bring back COVID lockdowns and mandates with all of their sudden fear-mongering about the new variants that are coming. These are bad people. These are sick people we're dealing with. But to every COVID tyrant who wants to take away our freedom, hear these words: we will not comply. So don't even think about it. We will not shut down our schools. We will not accept your lockdowns. We will not abide by your mask mandates, and we will not tolerate your vaccine mandates. I will use every available authority to cut federal funding to any school, college, airline, or public transportation system that imposes a mask mandate or a vaccine mandate. Thank you very much.
Watching COVID burn, watching COVID burn. June 9th, 2025. Let's get into it. So I want to dedicate this video to one of the only friends that I had in Florida. He was, in my opinion, a young man, a lot younger than me. He was in his 40s, pretty much semi-retired or retired for the most part, and he had done well for himself. Excellent physical condition. Rode his bike about every day. Let's see, didn't drink, didn't smoke, went to church every Sunday. Believed in Jesus Christ, thank God. That means he's in heaven now. And he was out riding his bike and his heart seized up and he died. Now, the ruling was a heart attack, but I know that he got the jab, and I can't come up with any other explanation for someone so young and in such good physical shape to die other than myocarditis caused by the vaccine. That's just my opinion. No doctor has said that. So I'm making a COVID-only video, and we're going to talk about the jab. And the biggest PSYOP that's ever been done on the country and on the world was not only the COVID hoax, it was also the jab. And its side effects were not known until after they had experimented on millions of people. To the best of my knowledge, you still can't sue the pharmaceutical companies if you have problems with the jab. That's why nurses everywhere, rather than take the mandate, decided to quit their jobs. So back when I was in the hospital, I've told this story many times, there was a shortage, a huge shortage of nurses because they had seen the side effects of the jab, and rather than take it, they quit the job. And so I had college students studying to be nurses, taking care of me in the hospital, which meant I had a bunch of people that didn't know what the hell they were doing. And I would plead with them. I say, isn't there an old nurse here somewhere in the hospital that you can send me, an experienced nurse? And occasionally I would get one, and you wouldn't believe the difference in care that an experienced nurse can give over what the Democrats did by firing all of the experienced nurses. That's who the Democrats are. They're authoritarians. I'll never, ever forget that experience in the hospital. I was there 3 months. But let's get started on the video for Tom. This is for Tom. So I found an excellent thread by the Vigilant Fox, and we're just going to read it, and we're going to go through some videos, some posts, and we're going to talk about COVID. By the way, George Galloway just got banned from Facebook. Now, I was banned from Facebook because I said something about masks back when they were censoring. And of course, you know what I said. I don't know if I can say it now. I don't want to get banned from YouTube again. But YouTube banned me because I said something about masks. And I just questioned their efficacy. Let's just say that. You want to wear a mask, you wear a mask. You do you. I never wore a mask and I never got the jab. Guess who's still here and guess who's not? I'm not condemning my buddy. He thought he was doing the right thing. But as a young man in good shape, his doctor should have told him that he would probably be all right even if he got COVID, because I got it. And I was, well, I can't say I was all right. I was in a chair for an entire month, coughing my guts out. I didn't know at that time. That was before we knew that COVID was in the country. That was in January of 2020. But because I had natural immunity, which the Democrats denied on that also, they denied natural immunity, and that troll Fauci, who needs to go to jail and killed millions of people, he's still walking free. As far as I know, he's still getting his government pension for crime. And just international law, arrest that, pardon my French, fucker, and put him in, and bring him up for crimes against humanity. But no, if you're a Democrat, or if you're a government bureaucrat and you break the law, you don't suffer any consequences. I even think about that police officer that killed Ashley Babbitt. She did get her settlement. Her family got a settlement from the government. In my opinion, it wasn't enough. But as far as I know, her killer is still walking the streets with a medal given to him by Congress, or the Democrats, because they were proud that he blew away a MAGA supporter. A Democrat could kill a conservative, they would gleefully walk over your dead body and spit on you. That's who your Democrat neighbor is, my friend. That's who your Democrat neighbor is. Let's get into the video. By the way, the Democrats are rioting in Los Angeles, and I've put out a post answering many people saying, Camp Pendleton's right there. Send in the freaking Marines. They'll do it just like in the Watts riots back in 1965, I believe it was. They sent in the Marines, and guess what? The riots were over in about 24 hours. National Guard, they're a bunch of pussies. They ain't gonna do squat. They're gonna stand around, let them throw bricks at them. They probably got some weak ass commander. Nah, you send in the Marines, he's gonna say, shoot to kill, baby. When you blow a couple of rioters' heads off, I guarantee you the rioting will stop right there. And you might not see it again in the rest of the country. But unfortunately, we're gonna see it again. I'm sorry I got off on a tangent. So the vaccine narrative is collapsing in real time. Dr. Marty McElroy just walked into the enemy territory, CBS, and took on Margaret Brennan over the CDC's vaccine guidance. She pushed the usual big pharma spin, as all Democrats do, but Markey came armed with facts and fire. And then he dropped a term for the CDC's vaccine panel that no one will forget. That's why I thought this was such a good thread. Anybody that takes on a Democrat and shows them what a freaking ignorant ass person they are, I'm proud of them, man. I'm proud of them. On Tuesday, HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. delivered a historic course correction from the Biden era vaccine mandate policy. Standing alongside NIH Director Dr. J, and I'm not going to try to pronounce that last name, and FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty McElroy, Kennedy announced that the COVID-19 vaccine recommendations for healthy children and pregnant women were officially removed from the CDC's immunization schedule, with NIH Director Dr. J, can't pronounce it, and FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty. I couldn't be more pleased to announce that as of today, the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women has been removed from the CDC immunization schedule in an unmistakable shift away from the coercive one-size-fits-all medicine, and a clear signal that data, not politics, is now leading the conversation. Let's watch that video now.
Hi, everybody. I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., your HHS Secretary, and I'm here today with NIH Director Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty McCary. I couldn't be more pleased to announce that as of today, the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women has been removed from the CDC recommended immunization schedule. Last year, the Biden administration urged healthy children to get yet another COVID shot despite the lack of any clinical data to support the repeat booster strategy in children.
That ends today. It's common sense and it's good science.
There's no evidence healthy kids need it today, and most countries have stopped recommending it for children.
We're now one step closer to realizing President Trump's promise to make America healthy again.
Produced by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Okay, thread number 2. We're just getting started, baby. You want to go get the jab? Go get it. Hell, if you're a Democrat, get the jab on top of the jab. Get the booster till you booster till you booster. I hope you boost yourself 100 times if you're a Democrat. Please get your booster. Oh man, it'll save your life for sure. Oh yeah, if you're a Democrat, go get it, baby. Dr. Marty McElroy took the fight straight into the lion's den, appearing on CBS to dismantle the network's go-to vaccine talking points. With host Margaret Brennan tried to paint the updated guidance as confusing, McElroy didn't flinch. Can you clearly state what the policy is? Because this is confusing, she asked. McElroy responded without hesitation. Yeah, we believe the recommendation should be with the patient and their doctor. That's when the real shift came into focus. So we're going to get away from the blanket recommendation in healthy young Americans. On the COVID vaccine schedule, we don't want to see the kids kicked out of school because a 12-year-old girl is not getting her 5th COVID booster shot. We don't see the data to support young, healthy child getting a repeat infinite annual COVID vaccine. He then laid out the sheer absurdity of what the old policy was, where the old policy was heading. There's a theory that we should sort blindly and approve COVID vaccine boosters in young, healthy kids every year in perpetuity. And a young girl born today should get 80 COVID mRNA shots or other COVID shots in her average lifespan. Let's see, sorry, I get lost in my place. We're saying that that's a theory, and we'd like to check it and get some randomized controlled data. It's about 4 years since the original randomized trials, so we'd like the evidence-based approach. Then came the knockout line delivered with the facts no one could deny. That is a decision between a parent and their doctor. I don't know if you know these statistics, but 88% of American kids, their parents have said no to the COVID shot last season. So America, the vast amount of Americans are saying no. Let's watch that video now.
Can you clearly state what the policy is? Because this is confusing.
Yeah, we believe the recommendation should be with the patient and their doctor. So we're going to get away from these blanket recommendations in healthy young Americans because we don't want to see, on the COVID vaccine schedule, we don't want to see kids kicked out of school because a 12-year-old girl is not getting her 5th COVID booster shot. We don't see the data there to support a young, healthy child getting a repeat infinite annual COVID vaccine. There's a theory that we should sort of blindly approve the new COVID boosters in young, healthy kids every year in perpetuity, and a young girl born today should get 80 COVID mRNA shots or other COVID shots in her average lifespan. We're saying that's a theory, and we'd like to check in and get some randomized controlled data. It's been about 4 years since the original randomized trials, so we'd like an evidence-based approach. Dr. Prasad and I published this in the New England Journal of Medicine last week. And we're basically saying we'd like to bring some confidence back to the public around this repeat booster strategy theory because...
Your statement was not about repeat boosters. It says the vaccine is not recommended for pregnant women. The vaccine is not recommended for healthy children. That's different than annual booster.
Yeah, at this point, we're dealing, it is a booster strategy. People would be getting the updated shot. So whether or not a young, healthy...
Kids who haven't gotten
so we'd like to see the data. We'd love to see that data
but on a
doesn't
practical
exist.
level, for a parent at home hearing you and trying to make sense
We're
here.
saying take it back to your doctor.
If their child has not been vaccinated, are you recommending that their first encounter with COVID be an actual infection?
We're not going to push the COVID shot in young, healthy kids without any clinical trial data supporting it. That is a decision between a parent and their doctor. And just so, I don't know if you know these statistics, but For 88% of American kids, their parents have said no to the COVID shot last season. So the vast majority of Americans are saying no. Maybe they want to see some clinical data as well. Maybe they have concerns about the safety.
I don't want to crowdsource my health guidance. I want a clear thing, right? We don't go with popularity. We go with, as you're saying, data. And when we look
so
at
let's see the data.
All right, thread number 3. Brennan tried to shift gears, falling back on CDC data, argue that even healthy kids remained at risk. So the CDC data said 41% of the children aged 6 months to 17 years hospitalized with COVID between 2022 and 2024 did not have known underlying condition. In other words, they looked healthy, she said. And COVID was serious for them, but McAree was ready, calm and precise. He dismantled the claim with surgical clarity. So first of all, we know the CDC data is contaminated with a lot of false positives. Damn it, the wind's blowing. From incidental positive COVID tests with routine testing of every kid that walks in the hospital. We know that data historically under the Biden administration did not distinguish being sick from COVID or an incidental positive COVID test. He shared what he heard from the people who actually run the ICUs in America. When you go to an ICU in America, you ask how many people are in the ICU that are healthy, that are sick with COVID. The answer I get again and again is we haven't seen that in a year or years. That's why he warned making universal recommendations based on flawed data isn't just wrong, it's dangerous. And so the worst thing you can do in public health is to put out absolute universal recommendation in young, healthy kids. And the vast majority of Americans are saying no. We want to see some data, and you say forget about the data, just get it anyway. Let's watch that video now.
So the CDC data said 41% of children aged 6 months to 17 years hospitalized with COVID between 2022 and 2024 did not have a known underlying condition. In other words, they looked healthy, and COVID was serious for them.
So first of all, we know the CDC data is contaminated with a lot of false positives from incidental positive COVID tests with routine testing of every kid that walks in the hospital. When I go to the ICU, when I walk to we know that data historically under the Biden administration did not distinguish being sick from COVID or an incidental positive COVID test. When you go to an ICU in America and you ask how many people are in the ICU that are healthy, that are sick with COVID, the answer I get again and again is we haven't seen that in a year or years. And so the worst thing you can do in public health is to put out an absolute universal recommendation in young, healthy kids. And the vast majority of Americans are saying, no, we want to see some data. And you say, forget about the data, just get it anyway.
Thread number 4. But it was the final exchange that landed like a sledgehammer. I love the way that the Vigilant Fox writes all this. I've got to move this pine cone so that hopefully it'll spring into a pine tree, get them off the trail. And anyway, when Brennan questioned why the HHS bypassed the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, ACIP, for the new policy shift, McAree landed a haymaker. That panel has been a kangaroo court where they just rubber stamp every single vaccine put in front of them. He said the committee hasn't been focused on science, but on messaging. I'm sorry, I lost my place. That panel has been a kangaroo rubber stamp every single vaccine put in. He said the committee hasn't been focused on science, but messaging and marketing. You look at the minutes of the last couple of years, they say we want a simple message for everybody so they just can't understand it. If it's not a data-based conversation, it's a conversation based on marketing and ease. Let's get through this thread and then I'm going to take a break. Whew, we're almost there. Let's see, is there... it just continues on. Then we got another video. And without real evidence, he warned, these recommendations become little more than guesswork. If there's zero clinical data, you're opining. I mean, it's a theory. And so we don't want to put out an absolute recommendation for kids with no clinical data to support it. The implication was unmistakable. Public health decisions should be based on evidence and transparency, not rubber stamps and slogans. For the first time in years, someone on national television was called out of the system. Here's a video on that.
So on data and transparency, for decades, since 1964, it was the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, ACIP, that went through this panel recommendation. I mean, people watched these things during COVID. The report was then handed up. It offered debate, it offered transparency, and it offered data points that people could refer back to. Why did you bypass all of this and just come down with a decision before the panel could meet and make that data?
That panel has been a kangaroo court where they just rubber stamp every single vaccine put in front of them. If you look at the minutes of the report from, they even say we were generally want to move towards a risk stratified approach.
So why not let them do that in June?
So in the meantime, we don't want an absolute recommendation for healthy kids to get it. They can do it, and that committee will meet and make recommendations. But you look at the minutes of the last couple of years, they say, we want a simple message for everybody just so they can understand it. It was not a data-based conversation. It was a conversation based on marketing and ease. And I've written an article titled Why the People Don't Trust the CDC. And it's in part from that blanket strategy.
Well, you're kind of telling them not to right now. You just said don't trust the CDC.
We're saying it's going to be between a doctor and a patient until that committee meets or more experts weigh in or we get some clinical data. If there's zero clinical data, you're opining. I mean, it's a theory. And so we don't want to put out an absolute recommendation for kids with no clinical data.
So you may.
All right, one more thread, and then we'll take a break. So actually, that's it for that thread. We got another video. This is actually Alex Jones on the same thing. In fact, I think one of the videos that you saw is actually in his video. But he says, global bombshell. Fauci tortured and killed black children for secret experiments and buried them in a mass grave in New York. HHS Secretary RFK Jr. exposes. It's a long video, but it's worth it. Let's watch that.
She went up to Hawthorne, New York, to the Gates of Heaven Cemetery. She found the cemetery where Fauci was disposing of the corpses of these children who died in his illegal experiments. She found an open pit. It was actually covered by an astroturf carpet. She opened the astroturf carpet and she saw hundreds and hundreds of tiny little coffins stacked haphazardly upon each other because these are children who have no parents and nobody was there to protect them. And Tony Fauci treated them as collateral damage, and his objective was to enlarge the markets for these pharmaceutical companies who he had partnered with.
The first thing I want to hit is something that in the mid-1990s into the 2000s I covered, and I interviewed many of the journalists that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the head of HHS, just talked about a few days ago on the High Wire with Dale Bigtree. And that is that Fauci, starting in 83 until 2000, tested deadly so-called HIV drugs that they knew turned off people's immune system and actually gave them AIDS symptoms so they could falsify the reports like they did with remdesivir for COVID and then say it was the recommended drug worldwide to then get hundreds of billions in Western government funding from the U.S. and other nations to then, quote, send aid to Africa and Latin America to kill people with the so-called HIV/AIDS treatments. That is his specialty. Just like Bayer got caught in the 90s in their own documents in Australia and France and Canada, knowingly putting HIV and hepatitis in their factor VIII blood product that killed millions of hemophiliacs. And also gave one of our reporters' brother, who is a hemophiliac, HIV, but they learned the science and how to not take the drugs, and so he didn't die. And perhaps if that reporter, who I didn't think to ask, would like to come in later in the broadcast with me and talk about it, I think he's okay with it. You should hear about it, because you can't swing a stick in the dark and not hit somebody who lost family or who got really sick from these murderers. And there were the executives of Bayer openly saying, hey, there's too many hemophiliacs, let's kill them. Now, get ready for this. In the late 1990s, I interviewed the investigative journalist, and I'm going to get her back on, who found the mass grave in New York full of dead black children murdered by Anthony Fauci. Do you hear what I just said? He doesn't just have the larynxes of hundreds of beagles removed and then put their heads in mesh cages with flesh-eating flies and maggots. No. That's just to make sure his researchers are evil and will do whatever he's telling them. He does this all over the world. He does it to children in India and in Nigeria and in South Africa and in Mexico and Brazil and over 120 other countries. He has been Joseph Mengele 2.0, the angel of death. He, under Obama's orders, created COVID-19 at Chapel Hill, North Carolina, moved it to Peter Daszak, the Eagle Health Alliance in Wuhan for cover. Had the so-called vaccine already on the shelf, that's all come out 2 years before, and rolled it out. They would block doctors in the U.S. around the world. Famous movie, Dallas Buyers Club, is based on a true story, who were giving people that had HIV real drugs that were curing them, and they knew it. Instead of boosting the immune system, they gave people drugs that killed their immune system. What does the HIV spike protein do? It turns off and kills your T lymphocytes, the white blood cells that command the other white blood cells. What does the new mRNA shot do? Mass produces the spike protein, but the way it's released, it turns off the white blood cells, doesn't kill them, but has the same effect. That's all on record. So he runs the same play over and over again. I'm going to tell you this again and play RFK Jr., the HHS head, talking about it. And it's in his book, The Real Dr. Anthony Fauci, that they premeditatedly, and it's not hundreds like the New York Times says, it was thousands in the U.S. alone. They mainly targeted blacks. They would go into a single mother with 2 or 3 children, and in court documents that came out, even the New York Times, in the early 2000s, finally reported on it, and say, well, you got a 3-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 12-year-old. And we say we've tested them and they have HIV. Most of the time it wasn't even true. How are they getting it? Children. And we're going to take them to a secret research facility, and if you don't sign these papers, we're going to take them all. And they murdered them. You understand that? So I want you to understand who we're up against. And Hotez is his attaché, his aide-de-camp, his protege. That's who these people are. And you have to understand this. They go out and get the best, brightest young minds in high school and college and recruit them into these systems since the 50s. My father, a physician, was recruited into it when he was 14 and told he was joining a feeder program for NASA under Eisenhower's Whiz Kid program that continued into Kennedy. Kennedy obviously knew what was going on. Eisenhower warned of the technocrats, scientific elite that couldn't be trusted because he found out what they were doing, but it continued on. He was in MD Anderson Cancer Research Facility in the secretive areas. They had people to sign up with their rights that were terminal, and they would test lethal drugs on them. And my dad noticed the scientists got off on it. Literally loved killing people. He said, I don't want to be part of this project. They said, oh, don't worry. We've got another project for you. And he won't tell me what that project was. But when I was a little kid, he told me about this. And when I went to get my driver's license, he said, don't sign the organ donor card. Dallas hospitals kill people who have car wrecks that are young for their organs. A decade later, 60 Minutes broke the story. So that's my own personal experience. And my dad, interestingly enough, was involved with a hospital he owned with partners in the Dallas Buyers Club, actually helping people. I remember that at the time. People coming over to the house, meetings about it. They made the decision. And my dad was playing chess with their doctors that they were going to supply the drugs. So that just shows you what a small world this is. My dad fighting what Fauci was doing in the 80s, and here I am today fighting Fauci. Small world. So you have to understand they do this to our military, they do it to anybody they control. They use them as guinea pigs. And it's pure evil. And I'll show you mainstream news articles admitting it, but trying to whitewash it in the 90s and 2000s. But this story is evergreen and is important to understand what we're up against, the premeditated evil. Now, why would they put young whiz kids in projects, they do the same thing in Europe, and put them in these research facilities watching this to get them used to it and to see if they will take part in it with the other mad scientists? We adopted Joseph Mengele's project, Operation Paperclip, on record. We adopted the Nazi weapons programs, rocket programs, jet programs, intelligence programs, eugenics, medical experimentation programs, while at the same time we created the Nuremberg Code explaining that that's the death penalty. And that's who Bill Gates represents, and his father, who headed up the main World Eugenics Society after Thomas Watson died, the owner and founder of IBM. It's a cult. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's real name, look it up, they've had award ceremonies and said it themselves, is the World Population Control Foundation. And that's what they're doing. They want to play God. They want a world treaty with the UN to take control of all of our bodies. They've got the outbreak FEMA camps in every major nation built, ready for medical martial law and Disease X, which they said they'll use to bring in total control. So continuing to expose this is beyond critical. There it is, World Population Foundation. All right. It's actually the World Population Control Foundation. And you can even pull that up in the New York Times, London Guardian. The nickname for it's called the Good Club, a corporate global government to carry out an 80% depopulation of the planet. Just type in Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, George Soros, the Good Club. All right. So here is HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. exposing Fauci and a mass grave, one of many, 95% of them plus, almost all of them black. Where's the NAACP? Where's the liberals? You see, they hate black people. So they ship drugs to their community and give them gangster rap and fast track them to prison. Tell them to kill Whitey, so we all kill each other. They keep their friends close and their enemies closer. And then a young black man thinks white people are his enemies, so he goes and kills Jamie White and then raps about it. When he doesn't know who his real enemy is, the globalists, all of our shared enemy. Here is HHS head talking about Fauci's secret Joseph Mengele experiments with what he knew was lethal drugs. Here it is.
Tony Fauci made sure that none of those kids had guardians, which is illegal. And then he hid what he was doing from the boards. He took foster homes in 6 states and he turned them over to the pharmaceutical industry. He made sure that the people who were running those foster homes did not even have medical training. Most of them were immigrants who came from the Dominican Republic. They knew nothing about medicine or responsibilities, and they were sickened when they realized slowly what they were involved in doing to these children, that they were torturing these children. And you know, there's videos of these children, an old BBC documentary that will make you cry. I promise you cannot look at these without weeping. One of these kids, a 12-year-old who's trying to protect the 8-year-old, and he has a tube in his stomach. And he's telling them, I tried to fight them, and this is what they do if you fight them. You can't fight them. You need to just take the drugs. And the kids didn't want to take them because the drugs were making them horribly sick. And Celia Farber, who's this amazing researcher who worked on this chapter for me and did a lot of the original research on it, she actually went up to Hawthorne, New York, to the gates of heaven cemetery. She found the cemetery where Fauci was disposing of the corpses of these children who died in his illegal experiments. She found an open pit. It was actually covered by an astroturf carpet. She opened the astroturf carpet and she saw hundreds and hundreds of tiny little coffins stacked haphazardly upon each other, because these are children who have no parents and nobody was there to protect them. And Tony Fauci treated them as collateral damage. And, his objective was to enlarge the markets for these pharmaceutical companies who he had partnered with by allowing HIV, these toxic chemotherapy drugs, to be given to children. And then the next experiments, which are in the next chapter, which are equally horrendous, is his experiments on Africans.
And the Gates Foundation has been indicted in the Netherlands and in India for their illegal lethal experiments ongoing on children with all sorts of nasty stuff. All right. So let me show you some articles and flashbacks here. Fauci's NIH-funded experiments on AIDS orphans in New York City. They did it all over the country, but New York and Maryland were the worst. Guinea pig kids. Fauci's legacy of cruel experiments on kids. Yeah, not just beagles. AIDS test on foster children violated rules, AP. AIDS drugs tested on foster kids. These are from the early 2000s. But then a few years ago, they came out with whitewashes on it. And they said, they reported the researchers disturbing higher death rates of the children they gave the drugs to. Well, and then they didn't have it all over the world. They were creating fake tests, then certifying it was safe. They knew what it would do. Turning off your immune system. Turning off infection-fighting blood cells. Why would you give somebody that if they're having an autoimmune issue of lower immunity? What's the COVID shot do? Exact same thing. NIH tested AIDS drugs on foster children, NPR. But 4 years ago, when everybody's exposing this again, AP, articles misrepresent Fauci-linked research involving foster children. Then they whitewash the number of deaths and say it's wonderful and no big deal. Associated Press's John Solomon says AIDS researchers enrolled foster kids in AIDS research studies without independent advocate protection. No, they locked them up, wouldn't let them escape, took them from their parents. It's far worse. Here's the report. The experiences of New York City foster children in HIV/AIDS clinical trials. The Vera Institute of Justice, 2009. Go read the report. Research involving wards of the state, vulnerable children. Now, let me take you up to where we are now. Unpacking the story of Fauci and the painful experiments involving dogs. I mean, where they killed them with maggots? But let's look at what's currently happening all over the Western world. But let's zoom in on Canada. Right now, they're coming for the kids. Bureaucrats study euthanizing autistic youth that are wards of the state. Well, they actually tried to pass the regulation last year, but there was such a furor by the medical community, finally had some soul, they backed off and said, well, we'll implement it in 2027, Trudeau said. But they're still bringing it where if you decide you're depressed and you're a child, well, you're of age at 5, they say, to be killed. And they convince you as a ward, or they just say, the kid wants to die. This is Joseph Mengele stuff. Because if you can get away with killing kids, you can do anything. They don't want to just kill them in the womb. Canada fails to rule out euthanasia for autistic children, documents show. California letting more girls in track championships amid trans controversy. We'll just put more girls in against the boys. Maybe the girls will actually win. Just all these sick jokes. It's all part of just undermining society, attacking our children. Last night, a man single-handedly carried his high school in Minnesota to a Class 4A softball championship. He pitched 14 shutout innings in back-to-back games to defeat the defending state champs. 14 shutout innings. You are shameful, sorry excuse for a man, says Riley Gaines. I totally agree. The point is, it's all part of the same system. 12-year-old was sent home from school because he said there are only two genders. This is all total brainwashing, a total assault on humanity. But now they're doing their mass medical testing on everybody and telling you that, oh, the vaccine's safe, it's effective, it's been tested. Yeah, it was tested in rats, 2013, 14, 15, COVID-19, Chapel Hill, and University of Texas, Galveston. Showed you the studies, and it killed half the mice and rats very quickly, and all of them didn't live as long. Isn't that nice? Isn't that sweet? Hey, if you take the shot, you can't get COVID, you can't spread it, says Rachel Maddow and all the rest of them. Oh, but they don't get any trouble for taking money to knowingly lie. No, Alex Jones needs to pay $1.5 million he doesn't have for doing things I never even said, because they're the good people. They're the Democratic Party. They're the eugenicists. They're the globalist death cult. But the good news is RFK Jr. cancels $800 million big pharma vaccine experiment for bird flu vaccine for humans that on record would probably cause, in a mutation by injecting people with it, a bird flu that would jump into humans. And that's how they turn us into the bombs. That's why you have all these different viruses now in the summer you never had. It all came as predicted by scientists and virologists out of injecting billions of people with experimental COVID shots during a pandemic.
All right, so that was Alex Jones. And then I got a post by Mila Joy right here. Major scandal revealed. New information indicates that senior Pfizer executives may have collaborated to postpone COVID-19 vaccine clinical trials to impact the 2020 election. One executive fearing investigation reportedly requested relocation to Canada. Now, if you know a Democrat, make sure they're getting their booster. All right? Just want to finish up right there. We'll get into the next few pages here in just a minute. I'm gonna get a drink of water. It's about 95 degrees. Nobody's here but me. Let's swing it around. Let you look at things just a little bit. Woo! I love being out here though. I love it. And I'm sorry that everybody, I can't believe the number of people that moved into the Ocala, Florida area, and nobody seems to know about this place, which is good. I like being here by myself. I just hope that, like Tom, I don't have a heart attack, because nobody will find me. The bears might find me. Nobody might find me ever. Maybe that funeral that I paid for won't be necessary. I'll just be dragged off in the woods somewhere, huh? All right, let's take a break. All right, rather than try to walk and talk and read, which wasn't working out too well, let's just I've got my water on the bench over here. By the way, before we get into the second half of the COVID video here, wanted to promote a future video. I'm about 3/4 of the way done building my tomato trellis, and I'll be posting that video once I'm done getting it over top of the tomato plants and showing you step by step how to make it. It actually became a much more complicated project than what you would have to do, because I have to make it hurricane proof, which meant, staking it down into the ground and everything else. And you could come up with a different way to hurricane proof your trellis, I'm sure. Anyway, let's get into this. This is from Anna Matson. I knew the COVID vaccine was dangerous, but after listening to this hearing, it's so much worse than we thought. We heard from top experts who have been censored until now. Here is what we know about the vaccine, and I got a picture there for you. Thread 1. First, I want to point out that the panel was placed under oath. If they lied, it would be a federal crime, and we got another picture for you. Thread 2. First, Peter McCullough, MD, who is one of the most published people in the world on COVID vaccine myocarditis, spoke. He saw warning signs, excuse me, I'm still dry even after drinking some water, as early as August of 2021, that the vaccines can cause myocarditis. And we got a video, let's watch that.
I've seen and examined more patients. I've examined more data, and I'm one of the most published people on the topic in the world. And as a cardiologist, I can tell you, my role in this was to fight disease, preserve life, and above all, do no harm. Do no harm. Now, the topic today is myocarditis or heart damage from the COVID-19 vaccines. I'm a cardiologist. I know the topic well. I've examined thousands of patients with this problem. Thousands. Before the pandemic, I had 2 patients ever with this problem. There's 1,065 papers in the peer-reviewed literature on COVID vaccine myocarditis. So let me summarize them for you. The first one that came on my radar screen that was alarming came from Washington University in St. Louis, August 18th of 2021. The first author is Verma and colleagues, New England Journal of Medicine. A 42-year-old man comes into Washington University Hospital with vaccine myocarditis. The infection is ruled out. It's the vaccine. He's in the hospital. This is one of our best hospitals in the United States. He dies 3 days after taking Moderna. They can't save him in the hospital.
Say, Dr. McCullough, move the microphone just a little bit away from you.
Then one was reported from Korea by Choi and colleagues. This is now a younger man. Just a few days after Pfizer, he comes in the hospital. He dies within 8 hours of being in the hospital. I can tell you, I'm a cardiologist. That doesn't even happen with heart attacks. He dies within 8 hours. I examined all of the slides and the images that the Koreans had showed us. It looked like somebody took a blowtorch to that heart. It was so completely fried with inflammation. His heart was destroyed. These cases, which were widely known at the time, should have gotten everyone's attention.
All right, thread 3. Myocarditis is inflammation of the heart. Before COVID, Dr. McCullough saw 2 patients with this problem. Now there are over 1,000 peer-reviewed studies on COVID vaccine myocarditis, and we have a picture for you. Thread 4. But that's not all. There have been 216 vaccine deaths this year alone. Medical products have been pulled from the market for a fraction of those deaths, yet the COVID vaccine remains, thanks to the Democrats. Got a video on that.
But I can tell you, I'm concerned that until the vaccines are stopped, there will be cases of acute myocarditis. And to finish, we've had 216 vaccine deaths this year alone. So if the vaccine campaign continues, we have to look at what are we getting out of it now, 4.5 years of the campaign, and how many more people will die.
All right, thread 5. Currently, the CDC reports that mRNA stays in the arm for a short period of time and then it leaves the body. However, Dr. Jordan Vaughn cited to a study that found the vaccine in the heart tissue of mice. So we know it hangs around and it was in the heart tissue of mice. And unfortunately, from what I understand, we haven't been doing autopsies to determine if it's in the hearts of these people that are dying, which is what we should be doing, right? But the big pharma owns the medical industry. What can you say? They own Congress too. We certainly own the Democrats, and they own Bernie Sanders. We know that. So let's see. Yeah, we got a video on that. Sorry.
Their assessment of Comirnaty, which is Pfizer's vaccine, noted biodistribution beyond the injection site, contradicting claims that the vaccine stays in the arm. And a recent groundbreaking study using single-cell precision nanocarrier identification revealed LNP accumulation in the heart tissue of mice with adverse proteomic changes in immune and vascular proteins, raising concerns about the cardiac complications that dovetail with what we were seeing when we were looking at the COVID-19 vaccine myocarditis.
There you go. If I didn't show that already. This especially hurts as I'm seeing close friends struggle with fertility. Dr. James Thorpe found that the vaccine causes miscarriage, stillbirth, birth defects, and even death of the newborn. Also, an animal study found the vaccine destroys 60% of the ovarian reserve. We got a video on that. Now, raise your hand if you think this was a Bill Gates plot. You know that he's wants everybody dead. What's that person called? I'll look it up when I get home. But he's one of the globalists that want to kill everybody because he thinks the world is overpopulated. Studies even found that women who had the vaccine in the first trimester had an 82% miscarriage rate. Video on that.
So the key is the percentage of women that got the vaccine in the first trimester had an 82% miscarriage. And by the way, that's the exact same miscarriage rate that was seen in the Pfizer 5.3.6 post-marketing data. So the key is the percentage of women that got the vaccine in the first trimester had an 82% miscarriage. And by the way, that's the exact same miscarriage rate that was seen in the Pfizer 5.3.6 post-marketing data.
Why this has been allowed to happen, pharma paid peer reviewers $1.06 billion to corrupt the peer review process and hide this data. We got a video on that.
Pharmaceutical companies paid $1.06 billion to reviewers at leading medical journals, the New England Journal of Medicine, JAMA, Lancet, and BMJ, thus corrupting the peer review process. At least 6 existing studies, 3 from CDC, FDA, and 2 from Pfizer, revealed major breaches in safety signals for COVID-19 vaccines and pregnancy. These findings were ignored. Conversely, countless independent researchers with no conflicts of interest published findings that contradicted the false narratives and the pharmaceutical industry narratives, only to be rewarded by persecution, censorship, and threats to their medical licenses and board certifications.
Thread 9, Dr. McAuliffe warned that death is a known side effect of these vaccines, and they still do not have a black box warning to give people informed consent. Another video.
Board certifications. This is not hypothetical. It happened to me. Pharmaceutical companies paid $1.06 billion to reviewers at leading medical journals, the New England Journal of Medicine, JAMA, Lancet, and BMJ, thus corrupting the peer review process. At least 6 existing studies, 3 from CDC, FDA, and 2 from Pfizer, revealed major breaches in safety signals for COVID-19 vaccines and pregnancy. These findings were ignored. Conversely, countless independent researchers with no conflicts of interest published findings that contradicted the false narratives and the pharmaceutical industry narratives, only to be rewarded by persecution, censorship, and threats to their medical licenses and board certifications. This is not hypothetical. It happened to me.
Thread 10, but wait, there's more. Dr. McAuliffe said it was reckless for sports teams to mandate the vaccine when strenuous activities should be avoided for people with myocarditis. Got another video.
Dr. McCullough, do you want to weigh in on that?
I've presented at the FDA advisory meetings. I've advised companies for decades on this, so I know the regulatory science very well. When a product definitely results in death, and there are thousands of peer-reviewed papers on this, Governor, the COVID vaccines in some people, sadly, result in death. Some on the very first day they take the shot. That must be a black box warning on the product immediately. I just checked the package inserts for the currently available products, the ones that Senator Blumenthal wants to pursue. Sounds like Governor wants to still pursue these. Our FDA still wants them to be administered. They still don't have the word death in the package insert. As of today, they don't. And so Americans are not fairly informed.
Now, if you don't recall, remember some of those healthy, I want to say it was NFL players that got the jab and they would just keel right over on the field. And I think it was also a couple of soccer players and they would just had a heart attack. And I believe it was some high school football players that actually had heart attacks on the field. Now, I'm going to tell you, growing up, I played high school football. I don't remember anybody having a heart attack on the football field. Do you? All right, let's just keep going. Thread number 11. But side effects are extremely rare, right? Wrong. According to Dr. Joel Walsog, serious adverse events happen for every 1 in 800 people in a video.
The most dangerous type is called giant cell myocarditis. It was very rare. I had seen 2 cases in my career. 1 was fatal, but it's in our guidelines. anyone who develops myocarditis cannot undergo strenuous physical activity. They have to be taken out of sports. It's mandatory because the surge of adrenaline when there's inflammation in the heart triggers a cardiac arrest. So you can imagine how reckless it was for the sports teams to mandate vaccines on athletes, provide no provision of safety, and then have them go out on the field.
Thread 12. Over 30,000 deaths have been reported to VAERS, V-A-E-R-S alone, and studies show that less than 1% of adverse events are actually reported to VAERS. And that's the reason is it's so damn complicated, and a lot of doctors, they don't even want to bother to put it in the VAERS database. Now, RFK is supposedly going to clean that up. So, and I've got a picture there for you, hopefully while I was talking. But the vaccine slowed the spread, right? No, it didn't even do that. We got a picture there for you. Oh, shit. Sorry, the wind blew over the camera. I'll cut out the portion there. Sorry, where the hell was I? Oh, yeah, we got the picture. So thread 14. So why have vaccine manufacturers not been held accountable for their dangerous product? There is only one product in America that you cannot sue the manufacturer for design defects, and that's vaccines. You can thank Congress for the PrEP Act and the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act for that. We got a video on that.
An analysis of clinical trial data showed that for every 800 people vaccinated, one suffers a serious adverse event. We are here today to end the silence for the 1 in 800. It is time to stop politicizing vaccine injuries and start building meaningful recognition, research, competent care, and fair and just compensation.
And we're just about done. Thread 15. Why are these vaccines still on the market? Well, it seems like this is Big Pharma's world. We're just living in it. Senator Ron Johnson has gone above and beyond to bring the truth to light, and we need more representatives like him to overcome Big Pharma. In the meantime, we need to educate ourselves and our family on the dangers of these vaccines. We don't have to wait for the government to act. I got a final picture. And my final comment is, you know, all the Democrats are bought, including Bernie Sanders. But only some of the Republicans have been bought by Big Pharma. You got Ron Johnson, and there's a few other MAGA Republicans. We've got to get the primaries going. Certainly get rid of Lindsey Graham. Okay, we've got to primary these rhino Republicans out in the midterms so that we can change this and hold the big pharma companies liable for the vaccines that injure people. Just saying.
For every product on the market, you can sue the manufacturer for harm, for design defect claims, meaning the claim that the product could have made safer. I mean, literally, look around this room, planes, cars, pharmaceutical drugs, every one. There's only one product in America. You cannot sue the manufacturer for design defect claim to claim that it could have been made safer, and that are vaccines. For every product on the market, you can sue the manufacturer for harm, for design defect claims, meaning the claim that the product could have made safer. I mean, literally, look around this room, planes, cars, pharmaceutical drugs, every one. There's only one product in America. You cannot sue the manufacturer for design defect claim to claim that it could have been made safer, and that are vaccines.
I just thought of something else. There was one piece of advice that Fauci gave that was actually legit, and that is wash your hands. You'd be surprised at the amount of bacteria your hands pick up over the course of a day, off of your keyboard, off of your phone. And I wash my hands quite often, and I haven't been sick for quite some time. Now, if you don't know it, maybe sometime count how many times your hands touch your face. I'm always scratching something or, you know, wiping my nose or whatever, scrubbing behind, scratching behind my ear like a dog. You know, so, yeah, do wash your hands. I wanted to give you some positive advice there. I don't usually do this in a video while I'm on my way back to the car on this day hike. You know, one of the things that I've talked about in my videos is everybody I know is dead. You know, Tom just died. I've still got a few relatives left in North Carolina and one friend there you know, that I know of. Not a single one here in Florida. So I used to have some friends here, but the Democrats disowned me. I considered them friends for up until the year 2020. And then, of course, the friends I've made since then have all died, unfortunately. Boy, I guess so anyway, I had to go back and watch the movie or the TV series Ash versus the Evil Dead. Now, if you recall back in the 70s, and I know that if you're young, you haven't seen it, but you got to check out Blazing Saddles. Blazing Saddles broke every norm that existed in movies up until that time. In fact, the executives, the Hollywood executives, that after the movie was produced by Mel Brooks, they said, no, we're not gonna put this out for public consumption. And they finally did a test on an audience, and the audience laughed so hard that they agreed to do another test showing, and that one went out extremely well. So they finally went ahead and released it to the public. And Mel Brooks had to fight the whole way through that movie to get them to keep scenes in, because it was so outrageous at the time. And so, in my opinion, Ash versus the Evil Dead, because it kind of reminded me, because everybody around Ash dies in the TV series. It's unbelievable. And I mean, the amount of blood and guts and chainsaws and heads being chopped off, and it's just nonstop. In fact, the actors in it, I mean, I can't imagine. They must have just thrown, the fake blood everywhere, I mean, it probably just, you got tired of it. I mean, you think about what the actors go through to make a TV series like that. And then it had my favorite. I don't know if you remember Xena, the Warrior Princess. That was one of my favorite shows in Hercules with Kevin Sorbo. I used to watch those back to back. Xena was my favorite. And I think it's Lucy Lawless, isn't that her name? Anyway, she's in Ash, and she plays the dark one in the TV series. God dang, if she didn't age real well. she's still good looking, man. I don't know how old she is when she made Ash versus the Evil Dead, but man, she's still a foxy lady. Anyway, you got to see it. It's just sick, man. It's so sick. I guess, I must be a sick person, because I'm really enjoying it. I've already seen it once, but I tell you what, watching it the second time after my buddy died, I just felt like, damn it, everybody around me just seems to die. So anyway, that's the only TV series that I think, that everybody dies in. Well, no deer or wildlife today, but we'll finish off with a nice nature shot here of a sunset. Whew. I found out the heat index when I started was 105 degrees. Yes, the dog days of summer are here in Florida. Wasn't that beautiful? Let's get back to that sun 1 second. I love it with that look behind the clouds. I'll get it right in the center. Awesome. All right, one more shot on here. Yeah, somebody's pointed out in Blazing Saddles, they made liberal use of the ninja word, and that you couldn't do that in a movie today. Anyway, I don't know. I thought it was pretty funny, especially the way they did it.